Now to a Saturday in America investigation. Our team has been talking to DHS officials all week, and we have learned that $700 million in cash was flown out of Minneapolis by Somali couriers in the past 2 years. That's roughly $350 million a year for 2024 and 2025. Now, to put that into perspective, that number is 10 to 1 compared to bigger airports like JFK and DFW. And we are told that they were about 3 to 4 million a year, quite a difference. But it's not just Minnesota, it's also happening in Columbus, Ohio, where officials tell us that since 2023, $136 million in bulk cash was flown from Columbus to Somalia. And now we're learning more about how the money got from Columbus to Somalia. First, bulk cash and luggage flies out of John Glenn Columbus International Airport. Then luggage lands in either Minneapolis or Atlanta before it is sent overseas. Meanwhile, these DHS sources told Saturday in America that Seattle is also seeing bulk cash transfers, although we learned it is significantly less than Minnesota and then Ohio. Now, we should note that those are the states with the largest Somali populations in the country: Minnesota, Ohio, and Washington. And the acting TSA administrator spoke on Capitol Hill explaining how they uncovered all of this.
TSA did indeed report these incidents as it came across the checkpoint, because bulk cash shows up as a mass on the X-ray, and so our officers have to resolve what they can't identify on the X-ray machine. And through the course of their normal day-to-day duties, they reported that to our law enforcement partners in compliance with their standard operating procedures. I know there's an ongoing investigation with our law enforcement partners. We are part of that.
Let's bring in Fox News contributor Paul Morrow. Paul, it is not illegal to carry cash through an airport, so let's be clear on that. It is not. But what is, I think, perking the interest in this investigation is $700 million through a small airport in Minnesota versus $3 million a year out of JFK.
Yeah, so Kaylee, in law enforcement, we would call that a clue. Okay, and to say to ourselves that a particular group has not embedded itself with a certain type of crime that you're seeing repeated over and over, especially at these numbers, is just to deny reality. I'm reminded of when J. Edgar Hoover, during the 20th century, used to deny the existence of the mafia because he wanted to put the FBI resources into countering communism. But we can't deny what's going on here when you see numbers like that. You're supposed to declare anything over $10,000, even if you're traveling as a group and it's an aggregate over $10,000. Now, if you declare it, that doesn't mean it's illegal, that, okay, I didn't declare it, so I'm going to go to jail. No. But if you didn't declare it, it sparks the interest of investigators. This stuff is logged, and ultimately the pattern emerges, and that's how investigations begin. The question for me becomes, how did $700 million going through a relatively small airport in Minneapolis not spark an intense investigation at the local level? I still don't have an answer for that.
That's a fantastic question, because I'm keeping my focus on the federal level. In fact, FBI Director Kash Patel, I'm asking him about this later in the show. But you're right, there could be a local investigation. And what would an investigation like that look like? I mean, you see a bunch of cash, you see $700 million. I mean, cash is kind of hard to trace. So how does an investigation even work?
So you would log the fact that that kind of money went out, and this is where joint task forces are so critical, and we really perfected them during the real height of the post-9/11 counterterrorism era. That stuff would go out, that is to say the lead would go out to local investigators who are on the ground, who know the terrain. Those investigators can trace the people who were carrying the money back to their site of origin to try to ascertain, where is this coming from? What kind of a business is being run here? How is it that they're traveling with this level of cash back to Somalia, a relatively impoverished nation? Do we have a narco scheme here? Do we have something else? And now you have a counterterrorism investigation, perhaps, because of Al-Shabaab. This should have set off bells and whistles everywhere. And the fact that somebody like Keith Ellison, who is the Attorney General of, supposedly calls himself the top cop of that state, met with the Feeding Our Future fraudsters and took the side of the fraudsters rather than initiate investigations, that's on tape. Those fraudsters in the meeting say, hey, we are one of Jacob Fry's major contributors. We hope he remembers that. That's all on tape. That meeting is out there, and it's almost certainly going to be a fundamental aspect of the investigations that we all know are going on. There was no interest in any of this at the state level in Minnesota.
No, there was not, and that is a remarkable clip. Paul Morrow, thank you for joining us. Well, new developments in the Minnesota fraud probe. President Trump just posted this on Truth Social. He said in part, quote, "The theft and fraud in Minnesota is far greater than the $19 billion originally projected." He went on to say that the Biden administration knew this fraud was happening and did absolutely nothing about it. House Oversight Chairman James Comer has said that Governor Walz, Attorney General Keith Ellison, will testify at a hearing on March 4th. That's this Wednesday. Now, this news comes as we unearth sound of both Ellison, our show found this, and Minneapolis Mayor Jacob Frey.
Many banks have been dropping out of helping to do the transaction between the United States and Somalia. So I wanted to work on the Somali side of the equation.
We're doing some phenomenal work with the Somali community right now, and we'd like to continue that. This is a community that is thriving, that's on the verge of absolutely amazing things, and we need to make sure we have government officials that are helping them along.
Right. Now, those comments were made years ago on Somali television, and this is all coming to light after Nick Shirley and David Hoke broke the story. They were back out on the streets this week.
When these people have these home healthcare companies, they're seeing them everywhere inside this building. What kind of fraud are they committing?
So there's false documentation being submitted to the state of Minnesota for services never provided. They're having forms signed in advance for services that were then never rendered as far as a year or 2 years in advance.
Minnesota whistleblower David Hoke joins me now. Now, this testimony, David, that's coming, it is not next Wednesday, it is March 4th, also a Wednesday. What do you want Keith Ellison and Jacob Frey to be asked about what you've reported?
Well, so actually my testimony is next Wednesday, February 4th, and then I think Ellison and Walz, and I was key in getting them subpoenaed to testify. And you know, I keep hearing about these money wires and Al-Shabaab and suitcases full of cash. And it's really quite maddening for me because to me, the solution is very simple. The federal government has to go to the Minnesota Department of Human Services and any of the other social service agencies anywhere in the country and say, look, if you're issuing payments using federal dollars in all or part, and it's going to a fraudulent business, you run the risk of federal prosecution. We're going to come in there, we're going to arrest you, we're going to handcuff you, we're going to drag you out, and we're going to bring you in front of the judge, and you're going to prison.
Yeah. Next week, so that's news, that your testimony next week, next Wednesday, we'll be watching that. I will certainly be closely. Will we learn anything new, or is this an opportunity to bring forth all of these revelations that you and Nick have gathered in these really viral videos?
Well, there will be a couple of things that will be new that I'll present to the committee, and I'm looking forward with great anticipation to the committee because Senator Klobuchar is on that committee, and she's now announced that she's running for governor. And what's going to be funny is I have a legal question for the committee that nobody's going to be able to answer.
Wow.
And so I think my testimony is going to be, it's going to border on electric. Yes.
Wow, I'll be watching for that legal question as someone who follows the law closely. So I do want to ask you about that. Senator Klobuchar will be running for governor of Minnesota. Your reporting made a difference. I would argue your reporting led to Governor Walz saying, hey, I'm sorry, I can't run again. It came after those fraud allegations. What do you think of a potential Governor Klobuchar?
Well, it's just more of the same. I mean, she's part of the whole, this whole fraud supporting network. She knows all about it. I've been contacting her for years about this fraud. She's never done a single thing about it. And, you know, in her defense, the Republicans haven't done a whole lot either. And so I'm really disappointed in all the elected officials from Minnesota because, you know, I've been running down this middle of the street with my hair on fire going, look at this fraud. And I put the number at 80 to $100 billion in Minnesota alone, going back to 1988. And you're going to find out that I'm right. And see how the number keeps ratcheting up? It was 250 million, then it was $1 billion, then it was 9 billion, now it's 18 billion. And I said, you got to keep going. because you have to include all of these city money, county money, state money, federal money, grants, NGOs, all of these things that are part of this fraud. That's where all that money in those suitcases at the airport's coming from. Just stop giving them the money and all those problems go away.
David Hook, we appreciate you. I'll be following your testimony. And we ask FBI Director Kash Patel about his investigation later in this hour. Thank you.